Nir Eyal, welcome to the Story Engine podcast. It is such a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Great to be here.
So there's a lot of things that I want to jump right into and talk to you about. I feel like it's really timely, and I've seen a lot of the work you're doing, and it's very brilliant stuff.
Thanks.
You when I first started researching you, the thing that immediately came to mind, I have a phrase that I often say when I'm speaking or writing, that you only get so much smart juice in a day in your brain, and you've got to be very careful with how you use it, because it's a limited resource that I feel like few people totally understand, and you, I feel, are a pioneer, and a big thinker in this area.
Thank you.
um,
Well, I'm looking forward to squeezing some of that brain juice. That sounds
there we go.
good and gross
Yes.
at the same. No, smart. You called it smart juice, not brain juice.
Smart juice. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Brain
So
juice sounds
still,
sounds gross.
yeah. Still close, but just a distinction of language. But before I get we dive right into that stuff, I'd love to introduce you properly. Can you tell me about a story in your life that has defined who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Wow. Well, there are many stories to share. I think probably the most pertinent story when it comes to my latest book, Indistractable, was what happened a few years ago that really prompted me to reconsider my relationship with distraction. And what occurred? I was with my daughter one afternoon, and we had a beautiful day planned, and we were going to just spend the day just being together. And we had this activity book of things that daddies and daughters could do together. And one of the activities in this book was to ask each other this question: if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you want? And I remember the question verbatim, but I can't tell you what my daughter said, because in that moment, I decided that there was something on my phone that I just had to check real quick. And my daughter got the message that whatever was on my phone was more important than she was. And so she left the room to play with some toy outside. And by the time I looked up from my phone, I realized I'd blown it. I'd missed this perfect daddy daughter moment. And I'll never forget it, because that's the moment when I decided I needed to reassess my relationship with distraction. Because if I'm honest with you, it wasn't just with my daughter that I was distracted. It was when I was with my friends or at work. I would sit down at my desk and I'd say, okay, I'm going to work on that big project, and yet I'd procrastinate. I'd put stuff off. I would lie to myself daily. I would say I was definitely going to go work out. I'm definitely going to start eating right. And yet I wouldn't. I would lie to myself day after day after day. And so if you ask me today what superpower I would most want, I would tell you it's the power to be indistractable. That I really believe that becoming indistractable is the skill of the century. Becoming indistractable is about striving to do what you say you're going to do. It's about living with personal integrity, being as honest with yourself as you are with other people. We all know that we shouldn't be liars, right? That's a horrible put down for someone to call you a liar. And yet we lie to ourselves every day. I would do this every day. I'd say I was going to do one thing, and yet I wouldn't get around to it. I'd have a to-do list full of all this stuff I plan to do, and yet I would just recycle that to-do list from one day to the next to the next. That's stopped. That doesn't happen anymore. Today, after 5 years of researching the psychology of distraction, I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm in the best physical shape of my life. I used to be clinically obese. Today, I'm in the best shape of my life at age 42. My relationship with my wife is better than ever. We've been married for 18 years now. My daughter and I have a wonderful relationship. And most importantly, I think I'm better able to teach her how to be indistractable. Because let's face it, if you think the world is distracting today with today's technologies, just wait a few years, right? The world is only going to become a more distracting place. And so it's imperative that we teach our children how to be able to concentrate, focus, and fight distraction. And so, I can't think of an area of my life that hasn't improved since I've learned how to become indistractable.
It's somewhat of a terrifying thought as a marketer and as somebody who, on a daily basis, is playing the game to get people's attention. The kind of becoming aware of what's going on in the world, and how so many things are designed to steal our attention away, distract us, and keep us from doing what's truly important to us. And,
Yeah,
and yeah.
yes, that is true. I mean, there are lots and lots of distractions out there, but I argued, and this is different from where I came to this originally. Originally, I thought that the technology was the problem, right? You know, I read these books that say that go on a digital detox or try digital minimalism or do a 30-day plan. And I tried that stuff and it didn't work. I
Hmm.
literally went, I bought on Alibaba, I bought this $12 flip phone like we all used to carry around in the 1990s. So I wouldn't have any apps. And then I bought myself a word processor from eBay that had no internet connection. And I thought, okay, well, now I'm definitely going to focus. I'm definitely going to concentrate. I'm going to sit down at my desk. I'm going to get to work because all those terrible technologies have been removed from my life. And guess what I did? Did I focus? Did I concentrate? Did I stop procrastinating? No. I would say, oh, there's that book I've been meaning to look into, or let me just organize my desk, or oh, the trash should be taken out. Let me just do that real quick. And I kept getting distracted. And so what we have to recognize is that distraction is not a new problem. Plato talked about this problem 2,500 years ago. He talked about how distracting the world was. People of every generation have been talking about how distracting things are and how they can't seem to focus. Literally, every generation has this problem. We talked about it with the radio and the television, the comic book, all the way back to the written word. Socrates talked about how the written word was an evil technology that would enfeeble men's minds. You see, the root cause of distraction, contrary to what you hear today in the media, the reason everybody believes that technology is guilty is because the media is perpetuating this story because it gets them clicks. We love clicking on headlines
Turn it
that
all
tell us
around. Turn it
our
all
brains
around.
are being hijacked. We love that stuff. We click on it day and night.
We're
And so they
getting
tell us,
distracted by the distracting
exactly,
news. Ah,
exactly.
it's so ironic, but you're totally right. Like when you were talking about this or a little bit earlier about how distractions going, I like immediately pictured like pretty much like a scene out of the Matrix where I have a
Yeah.
VR headset and I'm in a couch and tubes are coming out of me, and that's
Yeah.
just
And maybe in the future
dazzle.
that happens. But here's where most people, when they think about distraction, I mean, with today's technology, we don't have anything plugging into our brains directly. Where do people get distracted? They're on Facebook when they didn't mean to be, and they see an ad or they see a post, but they submit it to being on Facebook, right? You're
Mm.
watching a YouTube video when you should be working and you went down the wrong rabbit hole, right? That's minor stuff. That turns out not to be the real source of the problem. Newsflash. Real distraction, most distraction, does not start from outside of us. And this is the big revelation of my book and what really changed my life. It's not just about the external triggers. Of course, there's lots of things we can do about the external triggers. That's easy stuff. That's kindergarten. I'll teach you how to do that very, very quickly. What's harder and what's more important is not the distractions that start from outside of us. What is more important is the distraction that begins from within.
So let me make sure I'm on the right page with you. So
Mhm.
I'm imagining a situation. There's times I still have this where like there's this muscle memory on my keyboard where and anybody with like a browser. So I go control key, open up a new tab, and then just FA. And it's like already like that's all I need to do to just like it's lightning fast. You can do it and you're opening up a new tab in Facebook to get lost in that. And the battle you're saying right from there has been lost in a certain way already. There's something
Right.
that's happened kind of internally in my
Too late.
mind or in my
Yep.
gut before. Tell me what's going on there.
Yeah. So, back to Plato, 2,500 years ago, Plato said, he noticed this phenomenon of akrasia in the Greek. It means the tendency to do things against our better interest. And so he wondered, why do we have this? Why is it that despite knowing what to do, we don't do what we say we're going to do? Or why is it that when we say we're going to do one thing, we do something else? And the answer to Plato's 2,500-year-old question is that all distraction originates from within, that it's not about the external triggers, it's about the internal triggers. Internal triggers are these uncomfortable psychological states that we seek to escape from. And so if we're going to answer Plato's 2,500-year-old question of why do we do things against our better interest, we have to go a layer deeper, not only to understand why we get distracted, but why do we do anything and everything? What is the nature of human motivation? Why do we do what we do? Most people will tell you that motivation is about carrots and sticks. This is called Freud's pleasure principle. Turns out, though, neurologically, that we do not do things for the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. That is not true. It's not about carrots and sticks. that in fact, neurologically, the reason we do everything is not about pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. It's discomfort all the way down. Everything you do for one reason, and that is the desire to escape discomfort. Even the pursuit of pleasurable sensations, wanting to feel good, is itself psychologically destabilizing. Wanting, craving, desire, lusting. There's a reason we say love hurts, because neurologically that is exactly what is going on. So if all human behavior is prompted by a desire to escape discomfort, what that means, therefore, is that time management is pain management. Time management is pain management. If you think about why we get distracted, it's always about a desire to escape an uncomfortable sensation. When you're lonely, check Facebook. When you're uncertain, Google. When you're bored, check sports scores, go on Pinterest, go on Reddit. Oh, here's the thing that everybody does today. Let's check about the news, right? Because I need to be an informed citizen. That's BS. Why do we check the news? Because thinking about somebody else's problems helps us not think about our own. Obsessing about politics nationally and what Trump said and this and that, even though we do diddly squat, nobody knows their state representative, the stuff that we can actually affect. We don't talk about that stuff. That's not about being a concerned citizen. We talk about these national issues as entertainment to relieve us from boredom. That's why we get distracted. It's all about this unconscious escape from uncomfortable sensations. That's why we do these things. And if we don't address this problem, we will always blame the technology du jour, right? We will always blame something outside of us. When in reality, if we are going to master distraction, if we are going to be the kind of people we know we can be, if we are going to become indistractable, the first step has to be to master the internal triggers.
Wow. That reminds me of a of a story back from college. Whenever the word discomfort appears, I had this, it was a strange class. It was called Eastern Theater, and we were doing like Japanese style plays, which are very different than a Western style play. But we would start each day meditating, and he would make us kneel on this concrete floor. And the first day he did it, he was like, you're either going to learn to find comfort in this, or you're going to learn to accept the discomfort. And the words accept the discomfort have been a mantra for me for a long time. And usually when I'm the path of an entrepreneur, there's probably a mindset shift I can do around this, but it's paved in moments of discomfort, of sitting there and being like, oh, I'm not sure, is this going to work? I'm going to take a big risk. Or, facing as I very much admire you seem to be able to face a blank page and come out victorious very well.
That pain has never subsided, by the way. Being a writer, I've written 2 books and countless articles. It's always hard. But here's the thing. I think, unfortunately, the self-help, personal development, industrial complex these days sells us this lie that if we're not happy all the time, if we're ever dissatisfied, that something's wrong with us. And nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, think about it logically from an evolutionary basis. If there was ever a group of Homo sapiens who magically discovered how to never want for anything, how to be satisfied, how to be happy all the time, if that miraculous discovery was ever made and they knew the secret to being happy all the time, evolutionarily, our ancestors probably killed and ate them. Right? Because that would not be a good trait, right? That would not help the species survive. You want a species to always want more. So it is our perpetual disquietude that keeps us hunting and searching and inventing and striving and overturning despots and reaching for the stars and creating life-changing medicine, is all about the fact that we are uncomfortable, that we want to fix stuff. And so the idea here is not to squash that sensation. That is a spark that we can harness. Instead, what we want to do is to let it lead us towards traction as opposed to succumbing to distraction. So let me explain this. This is a really important point. If you ask most people, what is the opposite of distraction? They'll tell you it's focus, right? The opposite of distraction is focus. Not exactly. The opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction is traction. That if you look at the origin of both words, they both come from the Latin trahare, which means to pull. And they both end in the same 6-letter word, ACTION, that spells action. So traction is any action that pulls you towards what you want to do, things that you do with intent. The opposite of traction is distraction, any action that pulls you away from what you plan to do. So this is really, really important for 2 reasons. Number one, anything can be a distraction, right? How many times have you sat at your desk and say, okay, now I'm going to write, I'm going to start working on that hard thing, I'm going to finish that chapter, I'm going to stop procrastinating, here I go. But first, let me just check email real quick, right? Let me just Google that one quick thing. Let me just do that one quick task. Let me do that thing on my to-do list that's kind of easy to get momentum, right? And it feels productive. It feels like a work-related task, but that's not work. That's pseudo work. Because what you have allowed to happen is that you've allowed distraction to trick you into prioritizing the urgent at the expense of the important. That is a much more pernicious form of distraction than checking Facebook or playing Candy Crush at your desk. You know you're slacking off if you're playing Candy Crush when you're supposed to be writing. You know you're not doing what you're supposed to.
Refresh on Google Analytics when you've released a new post.
Exactly, because you say, oh, that's productive. I'm, making sure my business is running, right? It's just like people say, I need to be a concerned citizen. Let me watch the news constantly. Let me see about every, latest tweet that Donald Trump has tweeted. It's a waste of time. It's a complete distraction that we let fool us into thinking is not a waste of time. So anything can be a distraction, just as anything can be traction.
So I want to just to because I think there's actually a number that we can come up with for this. Can on average, if we're imagining the average entrepreneur out there, we'll say there's very few averages in this world, but we're working a normal 8-hour day. Of that, how many hours a day do you think the average person who's reading your books or in your research is spending in that pseudo work?
Oh, countless hours. I mean, we could, there's been actually been studies that show that the less time people are required to work, the more productive they are. that tasks fill to the time we allot. And so the more time you give to something, the more time people waste. And so in many ways, restricting the amount of time you have to do a task actually makes you way more productive. You will actually have more output, because then you have that element of fear that, I have to finish this in this given amount of time. I don't have time to just go down that rabbit hole or just do that quick Google search or just answer those emails when I really need to work on that specific project. So countless hours.
So I'll reflect, and I'll do this in an unflattering way to myself. I would think maybe around 30% of your day, maybe a third of your day could very easily succumb to this. Yeah. That might actually be a good day.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's a lot of evidence that shows that between all of the different distractions, by the way, the number one source of distraction in the office, in the workplace, it's not the pings and dings on your phone. The number one source of distraction, according to 80% of survey respondents, was other people, right? The open floor plan office. Perhaps the dumbest thing management has ever done are these open floor plan offices that we think makes us more productive because we get to share ideas. Rubbish. It actually makes us incredibly distracted because people come over and they tap you on the shoulder and they say, did you hear that bit of office gossip? Or can I talk to you for a quick sec? It's never a quick sec. And it takes us off track. It makes us distracted. So what we have to do is to hack back all of these various distractions, not just the tech distractions. Of course, my book will tell you how to hack back your phone, how to hack back your computer. Again, that's the kindergarten stuff. That's easy. The more important distractions are the ones that start from within and the ones that come to us from a culture rather than just from one source. So, if your boss calls you at 9 p.m. on a Friday night, is it the phone's fault? Is it the technology of the telephone that is at fault? Or is it the fact that you work in an organization where it's okay for someone to call you at this ungodly hour when you really should be spending time with your family or your friends?
That is an interesting question, and kind of just going to quantify, because I just think that this is such a valuable thing. If 30 to 50% of your day is lost to this pseudo work, if you're an entrepreneur, look at what you made last year, since we're recording this in February. So everybody's got a pretty good idea of what that number looks like at this time of year. And you could add like a year where you are indistractable would be plus like 50% plus 100%. You doubled your income if you didn't give in to distraction. Or you could like think about if you're in an open floor plan office and you have all of these employees, like half of their salary is being thrown away because and this is another thing, like attention and focus, which isn't traction, but I'm thinking there's a connection between traction. Maybe traction leads to focus.
So focus is what you do with your traction. So if what you want to do with your traction is to go on a walk, great. If it's to work on a story or meditate or pray, whatever it is you want to do. Hey, you know what? Even go on Facebook. There's nothing wrong with going on Facebook, but do it on your schedule and according to your values, not some app makers. So anything can be traction. There's nothing, I am not one of these tech critics that says, oh, this stuff is melting your brain, it's super awful, so don't use it. That's ridiculous. Seriously, these writers who say, go on a 30-day digital detox. If you don't check email for 30 days, you're gonna get fired, right? That doesn't work for most people. That's ridiculous. And why should you? These technologies are great. It's about how we use them. And I've discovered over the past 5 years this research-backed methodology so that we can keep these technologies and get the best of them without letting them get the best of us.
So do you have like, maybe I'd love like one quick exercise or maybe idea that we could put into action right away? What's one thing that we can do to work our indistractable muscles?
Yeah. Absolutely. So there are 4 big steps. So let me preview these real quick because this is super important. There are 4 major steps and they have to be done in order. The first step is to master the internal triggers, is to either fix the source of the discomfort. Look, if you have a source of discomfort that is constantly rearing its ugly head and that is causing you to escape, a difficult home life, an oppressive workplace culture, and you are reaching for booze or the news or Facebook or whatever it is that you're looking to escape from, if you don't deal with what's going on first and foremost, then that problem is not going to go away. So you have to learn how to fix the problems that you can fix. And for the problems you can't fix, you have to learn tactics to cope with that discomfort in a healthier manner. So that's step number 1, master the internal triggers. Step number 2 is about making time for traction. This is about planning out your day, because the fact of the matter is, in this day and age, if you don't plan your time, somebody's going to plan it for you. And so I show you how to make this very, very easy, very painless, to make sure that you decide how to spend your time. Because one thing I want you to remember, you have no right to call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. You can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. So if you've got lots of blank open white space in your day, don't be surprised if you fill it with junk because you didn't plan what the heck you wanted to do with it. So that's the second step. Turn your values into time by making time for traction. The third step is to hack back the external triggers. So this is where we do go into the pings and dings, as well as the open floor plan office, all of these different sources of distraction that start from outside of us. I tell you how to hack back each and every one of these. And then finally, we can prevent distraction with pacts. We can use these age-old techniques that I talk about in the book to help us, as a last resort, make sure that we don't get distracted. So those are the 4 basic techniques. Let me leave you with one tactic that I think anyone can implement today to start becoming indistractable. And this comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. I want you to know real quick, I read a lot of books, and most of them I can't even finish because they're about personal anecdotes. Oh, this worked for me, it's going to work for everyone. And a lot of books in the business genre are about this. Look at me, I'm a genius, do what I did. I hate those books because they're not research backed. And my book contains 20 pages of peer-reviewed studies, 20 pages of citations. Everything in the book is backed by good peer-reviewed studies. This is not new science. It's old science applied to a new field. And so this is one technique that comes out of acceptance and commitment therapy. It's decades old. Very few people know it and use it, but it's wonderful. This idea is called the 10-minute rule. And the 10-minute rule says that you can give in to any distraction, okay? Whether it's eating that piece of chocolate cake you shouldn't have, or whether it's smoking that cigarette, or checking email when you want to work on that big project. You can give in to that distraction in just 10 minutes, okay? Now, what do you do for those 10 minutes? You have 2 choices. You can either get back to the task at hand, your act of traction, do what it is you said you were going to do, or while you're waiting out the clock, what you want to do is to reflect on that sensation with curiosity rather than contempt. Okay, curiosity rather than contempt. What does that mean? You see, many people, when it comes to distraction, they fall into two categories. We have what's called the blamers and the shamers. The blamers, they say, oh, you see, I got distracted because it's Facebook, it's my boss, it's the iPhone, or I hear this all the time, it's the world we're living in these days, right? As if there was ever the good old days. I got news for you. There's never been a good old days. Every generation thinks this is the worst time in history. And of course, things keep getting better and better. So it doesn't make any sense to blame all this stuff outside of you because you can't change it. You're not going to make the iPhone go away. You're not going to make email just go away.
Let's
so it's
blame
not
the
effective.
millennials once
Yeah,
too.
blame them, right?
Stop taking the selfies. You're distracting me with
Exactly.
your
You're destroying civilization with your selfies. So it doesn't make sense to blame that stuff. It's not very productive. The other extreme are the shamers. The shamers, they don't blame things outside themselves. They take it on the inside. They say, oh, you see, I'm lazy, or here I go again getting distracted. This is who I am. I have such a short attention span. And they shame themselves. And of course, ironically, the more they shame themselves, the worse they feel about themselves, which makes them even more likely to seek escape through, you guessed it, distraction. So that doesn't work either. Exactly.
And this is uncomfortable. Huh?
This is what I used to do when I was clinically obese. I wasn't obese because I was hungry all the time. I ate because I was eating my feelings. I would eat when I was lonely. I would eat when I was bored. I would eat when I felt bad about how much I had eaten. And that was this vicious cycle that happens with distraction as well. We turn on the news way too much because we are looking for escape constantly. And so it doesn't make sense to blame ourselves. It doesn't make sense to shame ourselves. What we want to do is to not be blamers or shamers, but to be claimers. Claimers claim responsibility not for their feelings. This is a really important distinction. You cannot control how you feel. Okay, you can't control how you feel any more than you can control the urge to cough or to sneeze. You can't control those urges. What you can control is how you respond, hence the word responsibility, to those sensations. So back to this 10-minute rule. Your job is to take responsibility for that sensation by deciding how you will react. Will you impulsively reach for something to take your mind off of the discomfort? Or will you respond by being reflective and just sitting with that sensation for a few minutes and exploring it with curiosity, right? What's going on inside of me? Where is this feeling coming from? What can I do about it? You're just sitting with that sensation and exploring it with curiosity rather than contempt. And what you will find by the time those 10 minutes are up, you will either get back to that task at hand, or you will stay in that contemplative state, or by the time that those 10 minutes are up, 9 times out of 10, you'll be back at that task that you wanted to do originally.
So there's so many amazing things happening in here that I want to point out to the audience from a storytelling perspective. I think, though you called them out earlier, I think the self-help industrial complex or something like that is what you said. I think a lot of what you're doing is very founded in some of the best ideas coming out of that field right now, where you are, I'm a storyteller, so I look in terms of story. You're giving people the ability to change the story from it's so easy to blame the outside things and be upset with those of the world the way it is, whether it's a person or a communication or just, it's my own damn fault and I'm just a scoundrel.
Yeah.
But giving people not only the opportunity of, hey, there's a new story here, and creating, I love that you have all of this language that you very carefully define. And I think just being able to create these words and add more depth and more meaning to words, traction, responsibility, enables people to see different opportunities in their stories, to see things very differently. It's also very powerful for teaching, because these are subtle things that happen, mostly behind the veil of our everyday lives. And so just being able to call them out is like a very and having language around them is such a powerful teaching point. So not only are you're impacting people on kind of a personal development storytelling level, but this is also amazing public speaking, presentation, teaching materials. And so I just wanted to break that down for the listeners, because there's so much good stuff happening that that people want to be able to pick apart all these pieces that you've got some. I mean, it's no doubt from like spending so much time researching this and sharing these ideas that the best things are bubbling up. But
Thank
it's really
you.
cool.
I appreciate it. No, I'm a big word nerd, and there's a lot there, right? A lot of the words we use, we don't realize how they change over time. For example, addiction. You know, an addiction is a pathology. It's a persistent compulsive dependency on a behavior or substance that harms the user. And yet one of the ways that I think we become these blamers or shamers is that everything today is an addiction. Have you noticed this? Right? Like everything's an addiction. Well, why do we call things addictive? Why do we say, oh, you know, these technologies are so addictive? Why? Because when we say that, now when there's an addiction, there's a pusher, there's a dealer, right? There's somebody doing it to us. But when we call it what it really is, for the vast majority of people, unless you actually do have the pathology of addiction, it's not an addiction, it's a distraction. But distractions, of course, now when we call it what it really is, when we use the proper word, right? Now, oh crap, now I have to do something about it, right? That's not as much fun. Now I have to take responsibility for it.
But at the same time, I would say that addiction is like this looming indefeatable thing, and distraction is kind of like, it's a much smaller thing.
Right. And that's exactly what I want people to know, is that we can absolutely overcome this. Unless you are a child or someone who is pathologically addicted, the vast majority of us, we can do this. And so this book is meant to be empowering. I want people to know that they are way more powerful than these distractions if they know how to take them on.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so much fun exploring this. We're about at our time. I've got a closing thought, and then I'd like to invite you to share a closing thought and where we can learn more about you. So I was saying earlier, you only get so much smart juice, not brain juice, in a day. Right. And being focused and doing important things is a lot like sleep. And if you were trying to go to sleep and then somebody came in, you know, into your bedroom and was like, hey, Nir, quick question, you know, and you're like, oh, okay, you answer the question, and then they close the door and they come back like 45 minutes later, hey, Nir, quick question, then it wouldn't be a very good night's sleep. And I think distraction and doing important work is just like getting good REM sleep. You can't just fall back into good work. And so it's such a powerful and momentum building thing. And it's something like I feel I've actually been feeling the need for. There was a time where I was working, you know, waking up every morning and just working on articles. It was like the core of my business and my job. And now there's like so many different things that can distract from that, even though it's very valuable. And so I would just say to everybody out there, like treat your focus and treat your traction like a resource, and every distraction, it doesn't just take like 30 seconds. It takes a long time to get back into the flow, just like it takes a while to get back to sleep after somebody wakes you up.
It takes us about 20 minutes, the research finds, to get back on track after we are interrupted. And to your point of how we should treat our attention as a resource, as a commodity, there's a reason we call it paying attention. Just like we pay with money, we pay attention. It's something valuable that we are giving away.
Mm-hmm. And I guess on that note, stop giving it to dumb news sources that are just trying to make you feel anxious and get your clicks.
That's right. Amen to that.
Yeah. Anyway, close us out, Nir.
Yeah. So I guess the one final thing I'd want to make sure everyone hears is this mantra. I think if you were going to summarize my work over the past 5 years, it's that the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. Let me say that again. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. That, you know, everything we've been talking about, procrastination, distraction, akrasia, all of this is just about a problem of impulse control. Procrastination is an emotion regulation problem. And so the antidote to that impulsiveness is very simple. You know, our species has an evolutionary gift that no other animal on the face of the earth has, and that we can see the future. We can predict what is going to happen with greater fidelity than any other animal on the face of the earth. So the antidote to impulsiveness is very simple. It's planning ahead. If you wait until the chocolate cake is on the fork, you're going to eat it. If the cigarette is lit, you're going to smoke it. If your cell phone is on your nightstand at night, it's going to be the first thing you reach for in the morning when you wake up, because it's too late. They've already won. And so if you wait till that second where you need self-control and willpower, I got news for you. It's not going to work. They fail. What you have to do is to not rely upon self-control and willpower. What you need to rely upon is a system. That's how we become indistractable.
Amazing. Excellent promise, excellent ideas, excellent conversation. Nir, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. And again, close us out with where can we go to learn more about you? Where can we get your book?
Sure.
And anywhere else we can connect.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is nirandfar.com. Nir is spelled like my first name. So that's Nir and far.com. If you go to nirandfar.com, there is an Indistractable workbook. It's 80 pages. We couldn't fit it into the final edition of the book, but it's there for you. It's free. It's totally complimentary. And that's going to start you on your path to becoming indistractable. And if you do end up getting the book, make sure you visit Indistractable.com. There's a complimentary video course, as well as a bunch of other resources, tools that you can all download. All that's free as well at Indistractable.com. It's I-N, the word distract, A-B-L-E, Indistractable.com.
Thank you so much for joining us, Nir.
Thank you.
All right.